Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to chair this session entitled Food as Medicine, Superfoods, Frontier of Discovery Around Polyphenols and Other Bioactive Compounds in the Mediterranean Diet. The concept of food as medicine is not new. It's actually an ancient idea. You may have heard that food be thy medicine, and the medicine be thy food, a line often attributed to Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, although the sentiment fits ancient Greek thinking about the healing property of food. The exact wording likely not his. In China, the Huangdi Neijing, the foundational textbook of traditional Chinese medicine, first compiled more than 2,000 years ago, conveys a similar view captured in the phrase, medicine and food share the same origin. Today, we revisit that idea with modern tools focusing on polyphenols and other bioactive compounds within the Mediterranean dietary pattern. Polyphenol-rich foods like extra virgin olive oil and the blueberries are often called superfoods. Are they true superfoods, or is just a super diet? So we're very fortunate to have leading experts here to explore this and other questions. So I have four distinguished panelists: Professor Leandros Scott Sonis from University of Athens, Professor Rosa Lamina from University of Barcelona, Professor Antonia Trecaplo, who doesn't need an introduction, and then Professor Andreana Calera from Hierarchical University at Athens. So each of the panelists will speak for a few minutes, and then we will have a panel discussion. Let me first invite Professor Leandros Scott Sonis to speak for a few minutes.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for the introduction. Firstly, I would like to thank the organizing committee for this invitation to be here today and to present our work on bioactive compounds from Mediterranean diet, a topic which we have been working the last 30 years in my lab in the University of Athens. So we know that the Mediterranean diet is tightly connected with our Mediterranean civilization, but also the Mediterranean diet is associated with longevity and low rate of disease. But if we look in molecular level what this happened, we can explain this by the presence of small molecules in the component of the Mediterranean diet, like the famous oleuropein in olives. So the Mediterranean diet is rich in various bioactive compounds that contribute to its well-known health benefits. The most important is the polyphenol, and here we have the flavonoids, the anthocyan, the phenolic acid, the stilben, and the lignans. We have also the carotenoids, omega-3 fatty acid, fiber and prebiotics, organosulf compounds, and the terpenoids, a chemical classes which, in my opinion, is underestimated for the health benefits of Mediterranean diet. So we can see that chemistry is everywhere. So all this compound works synergistically to provide antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and cardioprotective effects that characterize the Mediterranean diet's health benefit. So it's very important to keep in mind that we need all these compounds together to have this health benefit of the Mediterranean diet. So in the next few minutes, I will give you two examples from emblematic Greek diet product, the olive oil and the mastic gum. So I will start by the mastic gum. The mastic gum is a resin that we obtain from Pistachia lentiscus, a plant that we can find everywhere in the Mediterranean countries, but it does not produce resin in high quantities except of the south part of Chios Island. So this production is very specific, only in the south part of the island. And today there is a production around 200 tons per year, and this product is PDO, and since 2014, the traditional cultivation of mastic resin in Chios is recognized as a cultural heritage by UNESCO. So concerning the pharmacological properties of this resin, it has been used in the Greek traditional medicine for various diseases like gastralgia, dyspepsia, peptic ulcer for more than 3,000 years. Even in Homeros cited the mastic gum. It's also widely used in the dentistry, and there are recent studies concerning the activity of this mastic gum against Helicobacter pylori and Crohn's disease, and there are at least 30 clinical studies, but Professor Kaliora later will develop this topic. So for this reason, the European Medicine Agency approved the mastic gum as a herbal medicine. So, and now we found the mastic in many foodstuff applications, in dressing sauce, in cream, in bakery products, in confectionery, in chewing gums is a very important product, but also in liquors and alcohols. But as far as concerns the chemical composition of the mastic gum, it's very complicated. We have the natural polymer that is around 30% of the mastic, and we have one natural fraction, one acid fraction, and some monoterpenoids from the essential oil. And if you think that when we eat a small tier of mastic, we absorb more than 100 triterpenoids. It's something fantastic. And the mastic is the only plant that produces in the same time the monoterpenoids, the diterpenoids, and triterpenoids, so there is a fantastic enzymatic activity. The first work on this mastic gum has been done by Professor Banton. The first publication was almost 70 years ago, and it's important to say that Professor Barton has the Nobel Prize 13 years later for his work on these triterpenoids. So we continue to work in our laboratory, the mastic gum, and recently we have isolated the pure polymer. We found this is Emerson polymer, and also the characteristic compound that we can find in the mastic, the mastichedionic acid and isomastichedionic acid, and now we have the possibility to evaluate this compound as drugs. So I shift now with the second compound, the olive oil. We know very well that the olive oil consumption is inversely related to the risk of cardiovascular disease and all cause of mortality. And of course, chemistry again, what is the chemical composition of the compound that we can find in olive oil? We have two fractions. One is the lipophilic fraction, where we have the fatty acid and the triterpenoids, very important, musclinic acid, oleanolic acid, and squalene. For this compound, we will discuss later. And the polyphenol fraction, where we have the lignans, the phenolic acid, the phenyl alcohol like tyrosol, hydroxytyrosol, in their free form or esterified by saccharidoids like the famous oleocantal and olacein. And EFSA has issued health claims for two specific compounds found in olive oils. One concerns the squalene, its antioxidant activity with protection of body tissue and skin from oxidant agents, and the second one concerns, in general, the polyphenols and the protection of blood lipids from oxidative stress. But to be applied to this second health claim, the olive oil must contain at least 5 milligrams of hydroxytyrosol per 20 grams of olive oil. So I would like to say a few words more for the squalene. The squalene is a polyunsaturated triterpenoid, and olive oil is one of the richest food sources of squalene. It contains 0.8% of the weight of olive oil could be the squalene. And what is very important that in the Mediterranean region, the consumption of daily of squalene is 200 to 400 milligrams, and in the United States is only 30 milligrams. And also the squalene have very important pharmacological properties as antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, and anti-atherosclerotic properties. But also the squalene have also very important skin protective properties. All the cosmetic products that we use contain squalene, and recently the squalene also is used as an adjuvant in common flu and COVID vaccines. So normally the squalene was obtained from shark liver oil. In 2012, the global demand was 2,200 tons. And look, keep in mind that for 1 ton of squalene, we need 3,000 sharks. So every year, 2 million sharks were captured and killed for their liver. So the cosmetic industry, of course, stopped this practice and tried to find plant-based squalene. In a similar way, the pharma industry also tried to have alternative sources for the squalene and not obtained from sharks. And we can say that there is another source of squalene, not only the olive oil, but also a byproduct of the olive oil industry. Indeed, during the refining procedure of low quality of olive oil, there is the step of deodorization, and this distillate is the most important source of plant-derived squalene. So in the University of Athens, we have developed a very efficient methodology in 2-step using molecular distillation and partition chromatography to isolate squalene with a purity 99%, which meet the criteria of pharmaceutical industry. And of course, we are very happy for this, but I think also the sharks were very happy for this approach. So just to conclude, what we need. Further research is required to optimize the process of extracting and isolating these compounds in a sustainable and efficient way. It's very important to study the viability, the metabolism of this compound, and of course the synergy with other compounds, and of course the efficacy and the toxicity. So we have a lot of things to do, but as Hippocrates said, life is short, art is long. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this kind invitation to be here and to present the results that we are performing in our research group. I don't know if there is a presentation. Well, in any case, I will focus my presentation today mainly on polyphenols that has been mentioned before, that are probably the antioxidants that are more extended in nature. They are almost in any plant food base, but also in a lot of plants that are not used for food consumption. So there are a lot now of interest also in extracting them of different origins to use them not only as food, for food supplements, or also they have other approaches, as for example, as natural colorants, as for using as additive to protect food. They are having a lot of uses nowadays in many purposes. Okay, well, or if you want, I do without the slide. Okay. Well, and what my talk would focus today is mainly also talking about the viability of these compounds and what happens in these compounds in the human body, no? Because I will present some slides that depending on the food matrix, you see big changes on the viability of this compound. For example, we have a study that I will present, but I will go quickly now, that I show with trans-resveratrol, that is a typical polyphenol, usually from red wine. For example, how it changes when you do the study. This study was done in 11 volunteers, but how it changes if you consume it or to take it with the form of wine, with the form of juice or mass, or with a pill. You would observe that there is a great decrease when you use pills, that sometimes almost like I am pharmacist, however I work more in nutrition. Sometimes pharmacists are looking for the bioactive compound and to put it on a pill and say, get the pill and you will have the same effect. And with that, what I want to say, that is not the same. We have to think that in the food, we have a lot of bioactive compounds, and some of them, okay, thank you. No, I will go ahead with, I will try to go quicker now. Well, this slide is only to show how many polyphenols are in nature, that there are many. Moreover, when they enter in the body, they still change a lot. And moreover, about the viability, no? How we measure the viability? Usually we do like a pharmacokinetic curve to see how it's absorbed and then how it declines, no? In the human blood. And here is what I wanted to show you, no? That if we do the same amount of resveratrol, that in this case, if you see, it's more or less 1 milligram of resveratrol in form of wine, in the form of juice, or in the form of a pill. And you see that, for example, in the form of a pill, how it is the curve is really much lower, no? That there is a decrease in the viability, that we have always to consider that. Moreover, we wanted to go further, and because for me it's much more interesting things in how are they are present in food, and how do we cook them, how do we prepare them, than the pills, no? The pills, I agree that are totally necessary, but if we can, we go to the prevention with food, no? So what we did is we performed an analysis, a randomized clinical trial analysis, giving tomato, that I will show how we prepare, and the same amount and the same tomato was given as tomato sauce, with tomato sauce with olive oil. And we measure polyphenols in blood or in urine. Before doing this these 3 interventions, the volunteers, this is really hard. It has to be 3 days without consumption coffee, red wine, fruit, vegetables. So they consume foods that are very poor in phenolic compounds. So it's very hard to be in these studies. And then we are lucky, like we're in the gastronomy department, so we have people that can prepare the food. So they prepare with the same tomatoes, they prepare the tomato sauce and the tomato sauce with olive oil, and then, well, we put in cold storage because for the intervention. This slide is showing the composition of the 3 forms: raw tomato, tomato sauce with olive oil, and you see that there are some phenolics that due to the processing, they decrease, and some phenolics that they increase due to the processing. It's not that they increase, it's that they are released from the food matrix, that they are combined with fiber and they are released. And here are some results, and what I would like to mention about that when we prepare the sauce with olive oil, what we observe is instead of 1 peak, 1 increase and 1 decrease, you observe 2 peaks. That we attribute that to the, like we call, enteropathic circulation. And that what does it mean? That these compounds are in the body for longer time, so they have more time to have bioactive activity. And after what we measure the inflammatory of these 3 foods, what were the inflammatory parameters on these 3 the volunteers with these 3 interventions, and what we observe when we add this oil, that is the yellow row, when we add oil, you always observe a higher effect, no? In any case, we are thinking that we are giving 3 things that are very healthy: tomato, tomato sauce, and tomato sauce with olive oil. Then we are not comparing an unhealthy food with a healthy food, no? The 3 things are very healthy, but with tomato, it increased the healthy things. Well, I will not explain that because these days there have been very good talks with Miguel Angel and Ramon talking about the Predimed. However, I would like to mention what we measure in the Predimed. We measure polyphenols in the Predimed. This is a very short study that we did. We measured the polyphenols coming from microbiota in 200 individuals, and what we observed that these polyphenols that we analyze in urine through MSMS, they were totally associated with a Mediterranean diet adherence. That was a questionnaire that was the MEDAS diet, the MEDAS questionnaire, sorry. And this was also associated with the ideal health score that was published by the American Heart Association, so a decrease in cardiovascular risk. Moreover, here this was mentioned before yesterday by Miguel Ángel Martínez about wine. I will go a little quick because this was done. But how did we think that tartaric acid could be a good biomarker of wine? Because we had the great opportunity many years ago to analyze the amphora of the old Egyptian museum, now there is a new one, from the King Tutankhamun tomb. And what we observed is that in the sepulchre of the room, there were, we analyzed these 3 amphoras, there were 3 kinds of wine. And how we measured that it was wine? With tartaric acid. So we thought, why not we use tartaric acid as biomarker of wine consumption? Because if we look, tartaric acid is like 11 times higher in any wine, in white wine or in red wine, than any phenolics. So what we did is to examine the association between urea tartaric acid and cardiovascular cardiovascular events. And these were the events that were measured in the PREDIMED study. These 4 events were considered. And this was remarked yesterday by Miguel Ángel, that we observed a decrease of the risk of 50%, having a low consumption of wine. Where we wanted to go further and to study the possible mechanism of this. And what we did a study with only 200 participants, but a longitudinal analysis, and we observed that there is also an association between tartaric acid and some inflammatory molecules. This was UVCAM. Moreover, we continue because tartaric acid is a biomarker of white wine and red wine. And we wanted to see if, with another biomarker, that this would be from red wine, biomarker of resveratrol metabolites that are coming from microbiota. And what we observe is also that using this biomarker, you see also a decrease in different inflammatory parameters. So this could be the possible mechanism by we can attribute to the consumption of wine, this protection against cardiovascular disease. And I will only mention this, that we also have the opportunity to work with a very famous cardiologist, Valentin Fuster, in a program in young population. This was a student population, and to try to promote healthy habits in Madrid and Barcelona with this population. And we were measuring the different cardiovascular parameters, cardiovascular risk parameters, along 4 years. However, what we observed, also analyzing these urines, is that there were some phenolic compounds that were clearly associated with the consumption of some foods, of nuts, of cherries, of grapes, in the case of resveratrol. Moreover, what we observe, that if we look, we have to think that they are children. They are children, teenagers, from 12 to 16 years, but some of them have metabolic syndrome. That this is very bad. And with the consumption of some phenolics, especially in this case, we observe higher association with urolithin and also with gallic acid. We observed that there was a decrease in this syndrome score, that I think is important to do these studies in young population, because nowadays they are not in very good shape. So what would be the take-home messages for that? That what we are observing is that microbiota polyphenols are associated with better cardiovascular health in elderly and teenagers. And tentative mechanism that we have studied is the reduction of inflammation. However, we think that we have to explore much more all the possible mechanisms. Here is my research team that I am very lucky because I have a very good research team of postdocs and predocs from all the world who are working with us. And finally, we try to be very active in all the media, because we try to also that our science goes to all the society, so that are not only influencers, the ones that are giving science to the society, also ourselves. Thank you.
Hello to everybody. We're going to talk today, may I have the first slide, please? About wild greens and herbs. Which are the benefits of these wild greens and herbal infusions? We're going to talk beyond olive oil, because I think we have been for many years discussing about the beneficial effects and proving them of olive oil. But there are some less studied, understudied and other reported components of the Mediterranean diet, which they have been overlooked for years. I don't know. No, this one, okay. No, before that, there's another one before this. The previous one. Well, since 1992, we start studying the traditional Greek foods. Originally, this was done for the sake of the next generation, because as I mentioned yesterday, at this time we were scared that Mediterranean diet would disappear forever. So we wanted to register for the future generation what Mediterranean diet meant. And for that project, we developed a targeted approach. We tried to find really old ladies traveling on around Greece and going and staying with them almost for 1 week. They were cooking for us, we were videotaping them, and we studied very much the ingredients, which they were the ingredients, how they were grown the ingredients. And then we chemically analyzed both the ingredients and the ready-to-be-eaten foods. We continue this, we'll continue that up to date, depending, of course, on the funding. But I wanted to show you. There. So, indicatively, I will show you the results of the fava. We went to Santorini almost 30 years ago in a tiny room in a kitchen. We stayed there for several days. And here you see the results when we examine the content of this fava in various flavon and flavin-3 antioxidants, let's say, flavonoids. We found very low concentration in fava. But then fava was served with a sauce, kaparokuba, based on capers and in tomato. I don't know what they do. You see, we never imagined that capari was offering so many antioxidants. And slowly we're moving in studying the various aromatic herbs and the wild greens, and we were surprised on the value and what they are offered. So, I don't know. Next, please. I'm not able, I'm sorry. Okay. We're going to talk very briefly about medicinal and aromatic plants, which they are botanical raw materials, also known as herbal medicine, and we have the privilege and the honor to have with us the previous speaker who spoke about so much about his research on the herbs and on the botanical raw materials. And they are used in for therapeutic purposes. But today we're going a little bit more on their culinary use, and as well as the herbal infusions. Next, please. So as I mentioned before, both of them, they're underreported and under studies, and herbs play a significant role in the traditional Mediterranean diet, and is a rich source of nutrients and phytochemical. Next, please. So as early as 1991, when we developed our national guidelines based on the 1993 pyramid, which developed with my colleagues in Boston, under the vegetables at this early time were underlined the value of wild greens. And in our national guidelines under the vegetables, it clearly is written, don't forget the greens. So the greens, they are an integral part of the Mediterranean diet. Next, please. And even several years later, in the European version of the Mediterranean diet pyramid, which it was the results of 2 years workshop and study all around Europe in various universities, and finally we agreed on this new version. We added, as you can see, on the right corner, water, don't forget water, and herbal infusions. Because herbal infusion, they are integral part, as I mentioned before, of the Mediterranean diet. And they are often, in our epidemiological analysis, we never take under account the assessment of the consumption of herbal infusion and of wild greens. So in our national consumption survey, the Greek National Survey, IDRIA, we found out that, next please, sideritis, which is called mountain tea. In Greece, tea for us is a new word. It entered our language maybe 100 years ago, even less. We call them herbal infusions, like sideritis and chamomile. So today, sideritis is consumed, 40% of the population in this national survey consume sideritis. Chamomile 1.8, but green tea and black tea 5.4 and black tea 3.2. And of course, next please, we were very much interested because, as I said, why we abandon our, I don't mention about herbal infusions, they are there, they have been there since the prehistoric time. If you go to the Museum of Heraklion in Crete, you will see a strainer in which they were used for their herbal infusion for dictamon. And then I said, let's find out. And then, from our survey, time's up, okay, 2 minutes, 1 minute more. Then we find out that the culinary herbs were 300, they offer 330 milligrams per day in our average daily adult diet in Greece. And they offer 70 milligrams per day in our daily diet today. Next, please. But as you can see, it's 15% around of the elderly who consume herbal infusion more than 4 times per week, and only 5 and much only, which is very low, very low percentage. And this is 50% for the elderly. The younger ones, they are abandoning this consumption. Next, please. So the epidemiological data are concordant in suggesting that Mediterranean diet decreases the risk of a variety of diseases, but the underpinning mechanisms are still unclear. we don't know how to what is due their protection, which metabolic way is responsible for that. So there is a lot of work toward this direction. Next, please. And here you see this trainer I mentioned to you before. You can see the real one in the museum in Iraklio in Crete. And I hope that you will consider in the future the use of aromatic herbs. I do not have to expand on that. In culinary tradition, Greek Mediterranean culinary tradition, as well as the consumption of herbal infusion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for inviting me, and I think it's really nice to have this short presentation after all these inspiring presentations. Dr. Trichopoulou, I would love to cooperate with you for the mechanisms that aromatic plants exhibit all these beneficial effects. I think it's very interesting. But now I will turn your attention to Chios masticha again. You have already heard Professor Skaltsounis and his analysis, his team's analysis on the profile, the chemical profile of Chios masticha. Just a few words of this unique and emblematic product of Greece. Chios masticha tree is unique because it is cultured only in Chios Island in Greece, in the southern part of Chios, in Mastichochoria. We consider it unique, and we consider it that it is a product that nowhere else can be cultivated. We know that it cannot cultivate it anywhere else but Chios, and we think that it is the microclimate or the soil and traditional cultivation methods and collection methods that allow this tree to be cultivated and produce this aromatic resin masticha only in Chios. This collection method that actually includes incisions, the local cultivators actually incise the trunk of the tree and let the masticha resin to drop on calcium carbonate, and then it hardens there. This very skillful method for collection is actually a UNESCO heritage, but I think that was mentioned before. We consider this also very important because it is inspiring for the next generation cultivators. We think that we should keep going with this traditional method of cultivation and collection, and we still go with these traditional methods. This is the backbone of collection of masticha. Yet nowadays we have many modern techniques that allow us to check on the authenticity and on the standardization of this emblematic natural product. Sorry, I need to go back. Okay. The active compounds have been reviewed by Professor Skaltsounis. Over 100 active compounds in this natural product, most of which are terpenes. Some polyphenols are there as well, but most of the bioactive compounds are terpenes, monoterpenes, sesquiterpenes, triterpenes, and all together work synergistically to exhibit many pharmacological activities. This is the first study of our group that was featured as the front cover in Molecular Nutrition and Food Research that actually proved that all these bioactive compounds that Professor Skaltsounis identified in the resin could actually be absorbed and could be bioavailable in humans. The main components, the masticha dienonic acid, and the isomasticadeanonic acid could actually be identified in plasma. This is really important, but what was more important is that this increase of the terpene concentration in plasma was paralleled with an increase in antioxidant capacity, which was for us the first functional validation of Chios mastica in humans. These are the core domains of investigation of our research group in Harokopio University on Chios mastica. Overall, we have a great interest in the interplay between nutrition and natural products, the interplay between nutrition and disease prevention and disease management. So this was the concept here in mastica. But more specifically, we have investigated for many years the effect of mastica in metabolic health, specifically the effects on the metabolism, on oxidative stress, on inflammation, and the potential treatment and gene interaction, as well as the effects on the GI health. For example, the effects on the gut microbiota composition and the effects on dyspepsia. But this last one, the dyspepsia, is not going to be part of this short presentation because we have submitted this data set for publication. I hope in near future I will be able to present this data because I think that this data set that will be published will actually help us to understand a little bit more about the effects in GI health and the benefits of mastica. But now this is a part only of the publications of our research group. You can see that we have a multidisciplinary approach. We are trying to investigate different options. Now, I will start with the clinical evidence, and I will start with the evidence deriving from a clinical trial in adults with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. We have focused in three markers. The first one is the total antioxidant capacity after administration of this natural product for 6 months in non-alcoholic fatty liver disease patients. And the third one is the CT1 and the liver fibrosis scores, which are MRI markers of liver health. You can see that adults with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease administered with this formulation, it was a nutraceutical formulation for the needs of the study, actually were benefited by this administration because the antioxidant capacity in plasma increased, and the markers of liver health actually were regulated. This is another result of the same study. Actually, we tried to see whether there is a treatment gene interaction in the case of mastica. Overall, mastica was able to decrease the inflammatory markers and increase the antioxidant markers in plasma. But what was really interesting, you can see the results from 6 loci in here, but it is really interesting that some people were more benefited from the treatment with this nutraceutical formulation, as in the example of interleukin 6 and interleukin 10, rather than other people. So we do understand that there must be a gene treatment interaction. Again, trying to increase our knowledge on this natural product, we ran an intervention with the essential oil of Chios masticha. What's interesting in the essential oil is the monoterpene concentration. It is very rich in monoterpenes, and you can see the alpha-pinene, the beta-pinene, the myrcene, and the limonene, which are the major compounds in the essential oil of Chios masticha. Different parameters actually were regulated after the administration of this nutraceutical formulation. You can see that we have a regulation in systolic blood pressure, and we have a regulation in triglycerides, a decrease in liver enzymes. But what is really interesting in this is that we had a difference in the mental score of the quality of life questionnaire. This is interesting. This is something that we would like to further investigate, because we know that aromatic profile in several natural products actually are involved in the neurotransmitter pathways of mood stabilization and of stress reduction. So this is really, really interesting. And as regards the effect on GI health, this is just one study on the microbiota composition after masticha administration versus a placebo nutraceutical formulation. We use the Bray-Curtis index, and we know that masticha administration in adults actually regulated the gut microbiota composition. This is really important. We also found that masticha could have an effect on flavonifractor, which is a species that is considered pro-inflammatory in our gut. This species is pro-inflammatory. It is really important that masticha could actually regulate this population, because flavonifractor actually is involved in antioxidant catabolism. So we consider that masticha is a strong, a powerful antioxidant compound due to this effect. And finally, we actually tried to find the molecular mechanism through which masticha exhibits different pharmacological activities. We consider the MIR-155 as the key molecule. You can see in yellow a complex, the L-Axer complex, that is actually regulated with the masticha administration. Experimentation was done in blood of adult patients administered with masticha. Up to now, we consider that this is the key, the molecule that actually activated by masticha exhibits both anti-inflammatory efficacy and benefits on obesity and metabolic health. So this is the last one. Thank you. I'm sorry for any delay. We consider that this natural product, an emblematic natural product of Greece, actually aligns fully with the Mediterranean diet concept. It is very rich in phytochemical compounds, bioactive phytochemical compounds. We do know that they are absorbed. We do know that they are bioavailable. And we have the clinical evidence that this product actually can benefit humans. We consider that this product can actually be part of our daily nutrition and can be incorporated in many culinary uses. Thank you.